Hiring discrimination based on sex was legal. Busted in 1964 with the Civil Rights Act. No American woman had ever flown in space. Busted in 1983 with Sally Ride and several great women astronauts to follow. Maternity leave was not mandated. Busted in 1993 with the Family and Medical Leave Act. No woman was in combat. Busted in 2013 when that ban was lifted. No woman had ever received the National Medal of Science and Engineering. Busted in 2014 with Mildred Dresselhaus.
Well, it's a little bit breezy out there, so I thought I'd move inside for the rest of our talk. And we started with people that have busted through some of those barriers because I wanted you to realize, as we're talking about the women we've stemmed from, that they really did have some things that they had to bust through. And they still went on to be amazing people and do some really good things. And so what we're going to do today is I want to cover 3 different eras with you. The first era is going to be about my foundation. The second era is going to be about my reality. And the third era is going to be about your reality. And in each of those eras, we're going to kind of talk about what was going on in the world at that time. I'm going to share with you some of the people that I've found inspirational from those eras, and hopefully you'll be inspired by them too. And then we'll talk a little bit about what was going on with me. So let's go ahead and get started. My foundation. We're talking about the 1960s, 1970s here. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. But in regards to engineering, we've got a whopping 1% of the engineers are women engineers. So not very good. And the fact that it even hit my radar when looking for talking points means that years before it was a lot less worse. But, spoiler alert, it does get better. There are some pieces of legislation, though, that are being passed in the United States that really will affect us and help us in the future. One of them I alluded to before, and that was Title VII, which is part of the Civil Rights Act, where it was deemed illegal to discriminate hiring, like hiring for a job, based on somebody's sex. So good. We also have Title IX, part of the Education Act, which you might be familiar with more in relation to sports. And Title IX is really about, it's about funding from getting federal money. And that federal money, if you're a school or organization, it needs to be used for something that will benefit both boys and girls. So if you get money for a basketball program, you can't just have something for the boys, you have to have something for the boys and girls. Now, we're concerned about Title IX in regards to engineering because labs get funding from the federal government. And when those labs get funding, they need to make sure that they are set up and conducive for men and women. So something's got to be, can't be too heavy for a female to lift, or it has to be in a safe place that females would be comfortable going. So it really has an impact in our era too. But who are some of the women that I feel were good role models in this era and people that I'm really impressed with? One of them, Yvonne Clarke. Yvonne happened to be the first African American that was a member of the Society of Women Engineers. Now, you're going to hear me talk a lot about the Society of Women Engineers, or SWE, because it plays a really big part in my life. But so Yvonne's the first Black woman to join the organization. She's also the first African American to get a mechanical engineering degree from Howard University, the first Black woman to get a MS in engineering management from Vanderbilt. And Yvonne goes on to be a professor at Tennessee Tech. So a lot of firsts for Yvonne, a lot of eras where she stepped up as the only person and the first in order to do what she wanted, to be an engineer. So it's always nice to see women like that we've learned from and have paved the way. But we also have Ada Pressman. Ada Pressman, also a big person in the Society of Women Engineers, and she's what we call a 3-pin winner. So Ada was a SWE president. She was a SWE fellow, and she also received the SWE Achievement Award, which is the highest award the society gives for technical achievements. Now, I happen to be a 2-pin person. I'm wearing my SWE president pin, and I'm also a SWE fellow, but I don't have the third one yet, so it may be at some point. But Ada, from a technical perspective, she worked on coal-fired energy power plants and nuclear power plants, really specifically made a name for herself in the safety of those, not only for the employees, but for the neighborhoods around them, to be sure that, if you're had a power plant near you, that your neighborhood was still good. And I really love seeing these women that have such strong technical accomplishments, because it shows people that yes, women engineers are out there and we can do this stuff too, and we can do some good stuff and make an impact. But what was going on with me? So I was actually born in 1964. I'm the last year of the baby boomers. And that picture up there is with my sister. We were eventually joined by my two little brothers. And I kind of had the idyllic childhood. So I have like no great trauma in my life. I had both parents that were married until my dad passed away in 1994. There were 4 kids. We lived in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. My parents owned a very small nursery. So I learned really early on the value of hard work, and could really see like if we did something here or spent too much money or had a bad season, I saw the effects directly and could do something different about it. So a great childhood growing up. And at this point in my life, I love math and science. I really, really love math. I like to read. I like school. I was one of those goofy kids that liked school, but didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And you know what? That's okay, because I was still pretty young. So that is our foundation, my foundation. But let's continue on with my reality. Now, my reality is the 80s and 90s, really the time when I'm, becoming an engineer, foundational, that sort of stuff. But what was going on in the world in the 80s and 90s? We were really focused on, worried about Japan. We wanted to be sure that Japan wasn't better than us. We wanted to be sure that, we had enough scientists so that we could compete globally with Japan. And at this point in time, we're now at 10% women engineers. So good. We've gone from 1% to 10%, but still not that many. And with those worried about the competition with Japan and still only having 10% women engineers, we're starting to say, what's going on? And there's research that's been being launched as far as why so few. Why so few women engineers? Why are women not going into engineers and becoming engineers? So with the legislation that was passed in the previous era, we actually see a lot of increase in things like the number of doctors and number of lawyers in regards to women going into those professions. But engineering, see more women engineers, but it's still not that many. So why so few? Let's dig into that research. Now we have the legislature that was passed to make sure that we have mandatory maternity leave for women who are having children, which is great. It doesn't mean it's paid, but at least we do have that legislature. So it's good, but still not a lot of women. So things are getting better. We're seeing the importance, but not sure what's going on there. But who are some of the women that I think are real role models in this era? Now, you're in Houston, astronauts are probably like everyday occurrence to you, but there's so many firsts from these women that were astronauts, with the first being the first American woman to go into space with Sally Ride. And Sally went on to do great things, was a constant role model and advocate for kids in STEM until her death. So Sally Ride's just such a pleasure to talk about. But then we also have Judith Resnick. Now, Judith was the first woman that was an engineer to go in space, and sadly we lost Judith with the Challenger disaster. But we have other women astronauts to look to also, and that's like Mae Jemison, Ellen Ochoa, so just a lot in that area, and so many more that have come after them. So a plethora of women to look to and role models in the astronaut ranks, and doing really good things with the space program. But up here, I also have Eleanor Baum. Now, Eleanor was the first dean that was a woman of an engineering department, and that wasn't until 1984. So for me, 1984 doesn't seem that long ago, but it's really important to have people like Eleanor becoming deans, because it shows the young women that are in engineering school that, look, if there's an engineer, she's a woman, she's proceeded, she's got her PhD, she taught, she's a professor, and she's reached this rank. So really a very visible position, even if there's only one in each engineering department. And Eleanor actually went on and was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. So good accomplishments from Eleanor in that era of the academics. Now, what's going on in my life in this era is I graduated from high school, I graduated from college, I actually went to the University of Cincinnati, got my bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. And, I had talked about my parents had this small business, so I really didn't know what an engineer did, and found it very important to go to school where I could co-op. And so I co-opted, and that picture up there on the top right is a picture of me at my first co-op job. And I'm actually working on drawings. I actually have drawings. I don't have it on the computer. And so while school was always so-so, once I got into engineering, I really liked what I was doing in co-op and really kept me in engineering and kept me wanting to go on and do more. But it was also in this era where I fell in love and got married. So I have a picture there with my husband, Carrie. We got married in 1990, and I'm happy to let you know that we just celebrated our 30th anniversary. So success story there, that's good. But also I started working at Caterpillar, and I remained at Caterpillar for about 30 years and recently retired from that company. But I was brought on there, working on components, working on mostly metal and plastic components, and I would work on components that went in stuff like our engines. And so think about this. This is like a Caterpillar engine, Caterpillar genset that's big, so maybe bigger than a truck. Lots of demanding application. But not only would I work in that, I worked in manufacturing, I worked on building a paint line and a wastewater treatment facility for a plant we were building in China. So tons of variety, tons of challenge, very challenging work and rewarding work. So I thought, this is good. I'm enjoying my work as an engineer. But it was also in this time when I felt like my male colleagues maybe weren't treating me the same as their peers. Now, no big harassment, but just I wasn't really felt as included as what I would have liked to. So I went and joined SWE, and I've remained a member ever since. But it really was because of not feeling included that I felt that I wanted to go ahead and join that organization and make a difference. And finally, your reality. So what we're talking about here is the year 2000 to present day. And what's happening today? You probably all know this because this is your reality. But in addition to all of the unrest with racial inequalities, we have a lot of discussion about men as allies, and I would say white women as allies too. And it's really about how do these women, we can't just say, hey, women, go off and fix the problem, or hey, African Americans, go fix the problem. We need to be in this together and have those allies of people that are from the majority. So I'm in the majority because I'm white. The male engineers are in the majority because they're men. So that sort of thing. So a lot of good discussion about we're in this together and we need to fix this together. But what do the numbers look like? So we're still just at 15% women in the engineering ranks. So once again, it's getting better. I'd still like to see it get better faster. But on the positive side of things, we have stuff we're talking about. We've got women on corporate boards. We've got women in CEO positions. We're talking about equal pay. We've got legislation that's been passed about we've got to have equal pay for equal work. And in better numbers, we've actually got 20% of the engineering deans are women. I think back 1984, we had Eleanor Obama as the first one, and now we've got 20%. And with that, you've got the more deans that are women. So that means you've got the professors that are engineering professors, and what you see then is a result of more females are graduating with those bachelor's degrees in engineering, up to 25-ish%, which is really great. And in some schools, it's actually at parity, meaning that we've got equal number of males and females that are graduating in the bachelor's program. So I never thought I'd see that, and that's really exciting, and I'm happy about that. But who are some of my role models in this era? So if we look at the first one there, Evelyn Cortez Davis. Now, Evelyn is, her family immigrated from El Salvador, and she's the first person in her family to graduate from college. So not only get an engineering degree, but to graduate from college. And she is a leader in the water industry in the Los Angeles Department of Water. So lots of people need water there in Los Angeles, and she is one of the people making that happen. But the reason why I really admire Evelyn is because she wrote a book, and the book is called December Sky, Beyond My Undocumented Life. This book is about her family's journey, her immigration story, her fear of being a student when she was undocumented, and then her journey to becoming a U.S. citizen. I mean, I just think that that is such a relevant story, and the fact that she's brave enough to share it with people, and so not only a U.S. citizen, but also doing good things with water for the people in Los Angeles. So way to go, Evelyn. We also have Mildred Dresselhaus, and I love this picture of Mildred, and she is the one that's the first woman engineer to receive the National Medal of Science and Engineering, and that didn't happen until 2014. So it's unfortunate we had to wait that long to get a woman to receive this, but it's really fun that it's Mildred. And Mildred knows all about carbon. They call her the queen of carbon, and she's down to like the atomic property. She's done research, her whole life research on getting to know carbon. So kind of neat, kind of a unique thing, and now she's been recognized for it. And then my friend, Maisha Gray Diggs, who I know because she's on the board of the Society of Women Engineers. And Maisha has a PhD in material science and engineering from Northwestern University. And she spent 11 years, a little more than a decade of her career working on consumer goods. So like Procter & Gamble, Clorox, so items that we all use every day, consumables. And then decided that she wanted to play more of a role in making sure that the right engineers were getting to the right jobs. So she is now working with Twitter in their recruitment efforts. And so she's the face of tech for Twitter. And her hashtag is inclusion's happening. And I love that because my experience with Maisha has been, she's not just content to sit back and say, we'll get there, we're doing the right things. She wants to make sure it happens now. So hashtag inclusion's happening is a great way to look at what Maisha's done, and it's a pleasure to know her. But what's happening on my front? So I continued to work at Caterpillar. I was then continued to work in more of a leadership role in some of those areas I talked about before with the components and new product and some manufacturing. I went on to lead Caterpillar's efforts in 3D printing, which was really fun. That's actually the one picture up there in the top right is in our 3D printing lab. I was talking to our CEO, but so great stuff. I had become the SWE president. So I was pleased to be the SWE president, and that's actually with that, I did a lot of advocacy, still continue to do it in Washington, D.C. And that's been a really rewarding part of my life. Really feels like I'm making a difference there. And after 30 years, though, that's my 30-year cake there at Caterpillar. We get cakes for years of service. I chose to retire from the company and start my own consulting firm where do it at my own pace when I went to, where I went to, working on deploying 3D printing. So it's been a great way to sort of be in this part of my life and do what I want to do and still give back and provide value of my life with SWE. So with that, I know we've talked a lot about these different eras, lots of barriers, lots of busting that people have done, but I don't want anybody to feel like they need to be the first in order to be a success. And I know a lot of those people were, but if you look back over my career and my successes, I was not the first in anything I did, nothing. And I still feel I made a difference, and I still feel like I was a success. So don't worry about if you're not going to be the first or you're not going to break some big barrier. So go forth. I want to see all of you, what you do in the future. If you break some barriers, great. If you don't, I want to make sure that you enjoy yourself, that you feel like you're making a difference, and you do what you want to do. So I look forward to seeing what you are all going to do in the future.